Welcome to Next Gen VC, a podcast from Gen Zs to Gen Zs. We aim to be the transparent window into the mysterious world of VCs and startups through the authentic conversations with the very individuals that make them. We're thrilled to be joined by Wee Kee, co-founder, CFO, and COO of PathDAO, one of the largest GameFi guilds in Asia. PathDAO aims to provide a unique value add for gamers and investors by building the world's largest GameFi gamer community. Having invested in more than 40 web3 games, PathDAO treasury is currently at $18 million. Before PathDAO, Wee Kee was a serial entrepreneur and built his own investment portfolio in the blockchain and DeFi space. He'll be sharing with us how he thinks fundraising and investing differs in the web3 world. If you enjoy our content, do support us by hitting the follow button and give us a follow on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram at NextGenVCPod for updates on the latest episodes.
Hi, Wee Kee. We are so excited to have you here and to hear about your journey with PathDAO. Could you maybe start by telling us a little bit more about yourself, how you got into Web3, and what PathDAO is?
Hey, thanks for having me. This is Wee Kee here from Malaysia. So a quick background about myself. Malaysian here, started my career in management consulting, BCG actually, with same as Audrey. My journey with Web3, back then was actually crypto. They did a good rebranding to Web3s to sound a bit less scammy. But back then in crypto in 2015, 2016, I read a book and I just bought Bitcoin and Ethereum. I didn't do much, right? I just hold. And then obviously went to management consulting with lots of slides and PowerPoint, and I didn't do anything. The only time then I got a bit more active in the sort of Web3 space is when Axie Infinity came out. Pretty much put all of my money into Axie. That's where we sort of started with GameFi. And then we basically also started sort of a scholarship fund, which is a common term that's coined by the Axie team. And that's pretty much everything started from there. Yeah.
And maybe taking a step back, what is PathDAO? Is it a VC? We saw that on your website, you do a lot of different things.
Yeah, PathDAO, it's a gaming DAO. What it means is that it's sort of a decentralized autonomous organization. So we put like-minded people together who are super passionate about gaming, specifically in Web3. And what we do then is because we play games ourselves, and today we are at 30,000 community members, we play the games and we also invest in games, right? And the way it works is that because the DAO has a treasury, as of today, we have around 18 million worth of treasury in our DAO. We invest in games and we also basically bring the gamers and the community to play the game that we invest in. That's the core, right? And I think the mission, also the vision that we have is that we want to use gaming as sort of the gateway to bring millions from sort of the Web2 world or anyone in the world to get acquainted with blockchain, with crypto. That's basically the end goal.
Could you go into a bit more detail about how the DAO works in terms of how decisions are made? Because it's quite different to those who don't really understand how Web3 and especially DAOs function.
Yeah, that's a good point. Honestly, before I started PathDAO, it wasn't really a common thing. And it is still not really a common thing these days. So to me, the exact definition of DAO should be almost all decisions should be made by democracy, right? So people vote, the community members vote, right? But obviously when it comes to actual execution, you might say, you know what, I'm just going to elect a council to basically run. And certain decisions will then be made by the council and some by the actual community. To me, DAO sounds actually more like a marketing exercise for most people and for most organizations because it sounds cooler. It's kind of like a buzzword and it's easier to raise money. And truth to be told, there's a bit of element of that for us as well. We sort of came across DAO because we saw some of our biggest competitors were coining themselves as a DAO, right? And we thought, it's probably a good idea. But I think the core of DAO for us is that whatever money we have in the treasury, if today I choose to liquidate, the money will go back to the DAO token holders. I think that's basically the true spirit of DAO, right? And in terms of how PathDAO is running today, the core team decides where we want to invest. We have the full autonomy. But when it comes to, let's say, what we do with the tokens, should we take money from VCs or some of the non-investment related stuff, then we typically put up a proposal and then we go to voting.
Okay, that's very interesting. And maybe just understand a little bit about why did you choose to focus on GameFi? I know you said that you're interested in games, but why not expand it to DeFi or focus on other areas of Web3 as well?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, right? So the official answer will obviously be like, because gaming is way bigger than finance. And so if you look at, let's say, Metamask, I think after so many years, their sort of active users are like 30 million. But if you look at Axie Infinity alone, like one game alone, they had like 2 million DAU a day, right? So the scale of the TAM is basically way bigger if you compare Gamefight versus DeFi. And that's the official answer. The unofficial answer of why we sort of focus on GameFi is basically we made money from Axie. It was a very natural route. Like, truth to be told, if I started becoming like active in 2020, which is sort of the DeFi summer, I would probably be starting the DeFi company, right? There's more of a backstory on that. But like, I mean, obviously, the team is very passionate about gaming, and it's way easier to sort of evaluate a gaming project compared to a DeFi project because DeFi project, I'm not the expert, but my understanding is that a lot of time is based on sort of reward, which then attract TVL. Whereas for gaming, it's more traditional, right? There's more fundamentals to it. So if more people play the games, the more bullish it becomes. So it's way easier for us to evaluate.
And in terms of actually evaluating it and just a GameFi project, apart from that, are there any kind of other metrics you consider when looking at a GameFi project?
I would love to evaluate a GameFi project based on fundamentals, such as MAU, DAU, retention, ARPU, like revenue per user, right? But the reality is that most of the games today in Web3 are not live. And the only time I use sort of the fundamental matrix is to evaluate XC, right? So far, PathDAO has invested in more than 50 games, and like all the investments that we make are based on basically how a VC evaluate a project because they are not live. So you look at the team, you look at sort of their vision and their roadmap, their backers, and also tokenomics, right? There's another lens that we typically look at when it comes to GameFi is actually how early are they in the cycle, right? And what it means is that because there are a lot of games that are actually sort of Ponzi-ish, and that means the life cycle is actually less than 6 to 12 months, right? And what we want to do then is we want to be as early as possible into the cycle, because once you enter at such a low price point that the downside is almost negligible, right? And then you try to capture the upside and potentially exit at sort of the top. That's another way of doing it for us.
Got it. And in terms of the team, I find that quite interesting because a lot of founders in the Web3 world are relatively discreet. How do you go about finding them and then understanding their background?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we don't invest in Undoc's team. And that poses a massive challenge because I actually got quite a bit of deal flow from China. But as you know, in China, like they can't review their identity, like just because the government's banned, right? But the short answer is that no, we need to know the team. We need to know their LinkedIn profiles. And typically what we do also is we will have a local partner. So for example, for China, we know some VC partners in China so that they actually visit their offices. They actually know their background, right? And so do cross-checking on those.
And you mentioned VC, and what's core to VC model, especially at the earlier stages, is deal sourcing. But in Web3, how does that differ from traditional VC who's been investing in, say, SaaS?
To be honest, like I'm forced to become a VC 4 months ago. I've not done any VC in my life. I'm still learning. But for us, it's like we work super hard, right? Like first, obviously, get super close with all the VCs, and then most of the time they don't care about you because you're small and they are big. And the way people share deal flows is they only want to share deal flows with the bigger folks because they want to be good friends with the bigger guys, right? But we somehow managed to still like work our way through. So as of today, we have like 10 to 15 deals a week. Most of them are shit, and probably invest 1 or 2 a week, right? That's one way, sharing deal flow among friends and VCs. What we do have, which typically VC don't have, is we have a community as well. They come to us most of the time and say like, hey guys, check out this new game. And they're not raising most of the time. And so what we do then is if you're excited about the game, we'll reach out to the founding team, maintain a good relationship with them. And whenever they are ready to raise, we are there. The final way, which is a bit different, is that we usually try to fight our way even after they announce their race. So they have made an announcement, all the top VCs are in. I was like, oh shit, we are super FOMO. We basically show ourselves really hard at talking to the founders and say, we just want to write a super small check, but we can add value in other ways. And that's how we squeeze our way in. So hard, man. It's super hard there. Super hard.
On that, actually, I remember in our previous conversation, you mentioned something very interesting about how PathDAO adds value versus large Web3 funds like Defiance and Animoca. I know you mentioned a bit about community. Can you maybe expand on that a bit?
Yeah, I think traditional VCs, they add value by saying that they are the industry expert, so they can sort of guide you. They have done this like 100 times, so they know what are the pitfalls. That's one. Second, obviously, they connect you with people. To me, that's probably the two key sort of value add, right? which I think actually PathDAO can do. We started our own project as well, so we know exactly how to launch a token, what kind of marketing you need to do, what kind of centralized exchange you need to do. So that kind of entire journey we did ourselves. Connection, as I mentioned earlier, like we try ourselves, and now I think we pretty much know, at least 50% of the big funds in the world. And so in the sense, we have decent connection as well. But what we do on top of traditional VCs is that we bring users to your game, right? I mean, if Audrey or whether today you started a game, you say, if you take my money, I'm going to bring users to you as well. And that's basically the biggest value add in my view, right? Bootstrapping the curve. I mean, obviously, I can't pump enough users for you to become a billion-dollar company. But sometimes the hardest is the cold start problem, right? It's for us to bootstrap the users and do a bit of marketing for you. I mean, you still have to have good product, right? And bringing organic growth, but that's what we do.
In terms of like fundraising as part of a DAO, what proportion would you say comes from institutional investors versus retail investors? And also, is on the institutional side, some people are still kind of wary around investing in Web3. How do you kind of persuade them?
So we don't persuade. For us, like 10% of our funding comes from the institution, 90% from the retail. That's because we were super lucky, right? I mean, when we started PathDAO, in my mind, I was like thinking if I could raise $2 million, I have enough runway for like 2 years, right? To do stuff, which is actually what we did. I mean, we raised 1.5 million from the institution. But because we were in a lucky time, so for bull market end of last year, we managed to raise 90% of our fund from the retail. So it really subject to how a DAO or an organization is in terms of the cycle. Like if you're in a bear, likely you have to raise from the institution, which is what we see these days, right? Like so many funds, announcing that they raise like 100 million, 200, 500 million crypto private funds, right? And these guys, regardless of the cycle, like they have to deploy their money in the private rounds of the companies. So it's actually like, even if it's a bear market, like companies, as long as you have a story to tell, like it's not that hard to raise money from the institution. Convincing wise, I don't think you need to convince. These guys are desperate to deploy.
And actually, on the market area, I mean, you mentioned that you started during the bull market, and we're starting to see a little bit of a more bearish industry now. How does that affect what you do, the deal sourcing? Are companies more willing to build right now, or are there actually less people entering the market and becoming founders?
No, I mean, so many games coming in. I mean, like, so first of all, like, PathDAO only invest in games. Second, like, what we see so far is that the valuation is getting compressed a little bit just because the public valuation is coming down. Obviously, the private round can't be too expensive. The subsequent observation is that actually a lot of Web2 game studios are going into Web3. So people like, for example, XC, right? These are basically a couple of folks super passionate about gaming and then they just start a game themselves. But what we see now is that there are more and more matured studios coming into the space. So let's say there's a specific game that we just invested $500,000 in. They have like a 1 million MAU already, right, in their game today. And they just say, you know what, I'm going to put in a bit of NFT element. It's still going to be the same app in iOS and Play Store. And now we are raising money, right? And it's very hard to not invest in them. They have already sort of solve the product market fit problem, right? Like it's just a matter of slapping a blockchain on top. But whether they can do it well or not is a separate question. But like personally, I feel like it's way easier for an established game to slap a blockchain stuff versus someone who built from scratch, right? And so that's what we see so far. Even until today, I struggle to explain what is the core difference between like a Web3 game and like a Web2 game. That's because there are multiple definitions to it, right? The initial sort of definition is that all the assets in the game now become an NFTs. Instead of just having in-game trading, you can basically have the NFTs and trade on any marketplace that you want because it's on the blockchain. And then you have people who say that, hey, what about the game logic, right? Instead of having a closed source code, you also put the game logic on chain. So everyone know exactly what the logic is, which means if I punch you, you're going to actually dodge, right? That particular logic is on chain, it's transparent. That's another definition of Web3 gaming. And so there's a massive spectrum here. To me, even without that sort of on-chain gaming logic, even just having NFTs for the assets alone is super bullish for me because 20% of the population in the world are gamers. We are looking at sort of an addressable market of like 150 billion. But like if you think about an entertainment, right? Like, okay, you subscribe for Netflix, you pay like $10 a month or something, and that means you're likely to spend around $50 a month to play a game, let's say. That's basically the current TAM. People play a lovely game, they spend $50. Instead of treating it as an expense, you're now thinking of it as an investment, right? Because when you invest in, let's say, a skin or a specific asset, usually you will say, I can't sell it anymore, right? In the traditional gaming world. But in the Web3 world, you say, the day I stop playing, I can still sell those assets, right? And so it's more of an investment mindset. So now the TAM instantly become like 10 to 54 higher, which is also super exciting in that sense.
That's a very interesting way of looking at it. And you seem very excited about the whole GameFi space. So can you tell us about a GameFi project which you are really excited about, which is kind of, on your radar?
Yeah, I mean, deep down, I have been looking for a game that truly embraces blockchain. And when I say that, it basically means that obviously the NFT asset component, but also the composability part, right? What it means is that if I build a game, all the source code is basically transparent. And so now if Audrey really enjoyed playing my game and she wants to improve my game, she can just take my source code, make a bit of tweak, and then become a better game, right? So that kind of layer on innovation, which is what we see on Ethereum or on all the other ones, right? Because they can just take one and then make it better. Today, we are not seeing that yet, just because of sort of the blockchain limitation. You can't just put too much logic on blockchain because it's just congested. So on that end, I have not seen yet, so I can't give you a name. But on the other end, like to me, the bullish point is that you want to let the users basically play a game without the hassle of a blockchain. So like, Metamask, remembering your seed phrase, getting hacked, stuff like that, right? And that's when you truly able to basically onboard millions of people, because these guys don't care about security or whatever. They just want to play a game, right? And the specific name that comes to my mind is League of Kingdom, which is basically a game that PathDAO has been in part of the ecosystem since, I would say, November last year. It's basically like you farm resources and then you build your castle, and then few of you basically build a castle, you form a guild. Then the way you make money then is because you have your sort of army, you can attack other people, you can loot. So when you attack someone and you successfully attack them, you basically get the stuff and then you can sell their stuff, right? That's how you make money. And obviously you can get attacked as well. That's how you lose money, right? And the beauty of this game is that people actually throw money in, and which is very rare in the Web3 scene, because most of the Web3 scene, when people think about play to earn, it's like, I only play the game because I want to earn money. But what we see so far for this game, for League of Kingdom, is that they have 100,000 DAU, massive retention. There's no Ponzinomics behind, which means people are not playing just to earn money. In fact, people are throwing in money just to have fun. So that's what I'm super bullish on, and we are going to see more and more games like this coming out, which is truly fun, and people are willing to throw money in. That basically solves the whole sustainability issue that we've historically seen in the XE world or some of the other Ponzi games.
No, yeah, there's definitely been a shift from, the typical play to earn method towards a more play and earn scheme that more and more GameFi projects have today. And another thing that you mentioned that I thought was interesting was a lot of people who want to enter GameFi or Web3 in general, they are concerned with things about MetaMask, security, secret phrases. How do you go about learning about these security issues, but also just broadly Web3 in general? Because a lot of people want to learn, and it's often quite intimidating, and the resources are quite decentralized as well.
Yeah, I think the best way to learn is find a group of friends and just do research together. It feels a bit safer to do uncertain stuff with a group of friends. The best way to learn, in my view, though, is just to take risk. Like, it's very hard to just read stuff. And like, it's funny for me to see someone to read a book about crypto, because, okay, it's not bad to learn about crypto, but if you want to make money, you can't read a book, because by the time the book is published, the information is outdated for 2 years, right? And like in crypto, everything moves so quickly. My advice to people is always like, you put in $1,000, start losing money, then you will start learning.
Do you have any advice for people who are Gen Z, who are young, but want to kind of get into GameFi investing? How would you say they could best position themselves and market themselves, especially as so many people are now entering the space?
I feel like if you are a gamer, you have a massive advantage. So in GameFi world, like if you truly play a game, if you immerse yourself in like the Discord, the community, that's when you truly sort of discover the alpha. If you're not a gamer, I guess the best way to learn is just to whack. Yeah, I mean, you just gotta whack.
Okay, and I think now is the perfect time to go into the quick fire round, which is essentially very short questions where you'll have 20 to 30 seconds to answer and share your thoughts on them. Are you ready for it, Wee Kee?
Yeah.
Okay, so very first question. What is one dish everyone has to try from Malaysia?
Nasi lemak.
Can you explain what that is?
Oh yeah, so it's basically like a coconut rice with a bit of spicy sambal, like a chili sauce on top. You gotta try that. I mean, that's a typical Malaysian dish.
And in terms of learning about GameFi, who are your go-to Twitter accounts to learn more from?
I would suggest PathDAO. Okay, apart from PathDAO, I think some of the GameFi accounts, I follow a lot of them. I think the best way is just to follow some of the big games and see sort of what are the updated roadmaps from them. I can share with you a list. I just can't sort of on top of my head to give you the names.
Yeah, of course, you can definitely share it through our LinkedIn or Twitter after this episode is published. And the next question, other than Malaysia or other than Klang or KL, what's your favorite city or country in the world?
I guess it would have to be London just because I spent like 4 years there. But then I realized like after the people are gone, it's actually not as fun anymore. So it's really just about the people. Yeah.
And in terms of your career, if you weren't doing PathDAO, what would you be doing?
Probably still trying to hustle and start my own company. But if not, I would be joining a tech company, trying to understand how to grow a tech company specifically on marketplaces. Actually, that's my personal passion.
And why are you so interested in marketplaces?
The good thing about marketplaces is that it's super hard to start, but once you sort of hit the threshold, it becomes a winner-take-all situation, and it's just massive satisfaction.
And on that, actually, is that something that you're hoping to build for PathDAO as well? And more generally, what's next for PathDAO?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we're actually building a social platform. The idea is an Instagram or a LinkedIn for gamers. I mean, so first of all, today, like when you scroll Facebook, Instagram, looking at all the advertisement, all the money goes to Mark Zuckerberg, right? Which is not good. Web3 solves this by basically giving most of the income back to the users. So that's what we're trying to do. But secondly, we realize that for gamers today, there is no sort of dedicated social platform for you to share some of the achievements that you have or like some of the roadblocks that you face in games and in general, like the metaverses, right? And so, yeah, we want to put like-minded people together on the social platform, share some of their highlights in games. And at the same time, if possible, like if you are a really good content creator, also get some of the income back to you yourself, right? Instead of getting exploited by Instagram or Facebook.
That's super cool. And if you could go back to when you were 18, what would be your biggest piece of advice to your younger self?
No, I think just be curious, man. Honestly, if I didn't read a book about Bitcoin, which is funny because I just said like you don't read a book about crypto, but if I didn't read a book about Bitcoin, I would have invested in Bitcoin. And just whack stuff, be curious in general, like spend some time on Reddit, look at some random shit. That's when you discover a lot of stuff that people are not looking at, basically.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much for your time, Wee Kee. We've definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners have too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Next Gen VC, a podcast from Gen Zs to Gen Zs. If you enjoy our content, do support us by hitting the subscribe button and give us a follow on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram at Next Gen VC Pod for updates on the latest episodes.